Let me tell you the story of how I fought horrific beasts, cheated death countless times, unraveled a great mystery, and strangest of all, actually managed to have fun in Dayz. It all started with me waking up in a dark field. The cold and rain ensured that I would soon start freezing to death. However, there were houses nearby. I found myself at some sort of abandoned camping ground, but I wasn't alone. With the two zombies now dead, I was able to check the nearby cabins for supplies. Oh, thank God. It's like the kind of sweater like a busty librarian would wear. Picking the cabins clean, I was a little bit warmer, and I had a pistol, but no ammo for it. Still hungry and still cold, I followed the only dirt road out of here. Trudging through the rain and the darkness, completely blind, I stumbled across another camping ground where I found a few more supplies, notably a nearly broken knife. Yet still no food. So I re-entered the woods and once again began searching blindly for any salvation. Finally, dancing to my vision like a glimmer of sunlight, I saw an asphalt road. As I emerged from the woods, I saw that it led into a giant city. If there's not some food here, then I don't think there is anywhere. However, upon entering the outskirts of town, I officially began to starve to death. I had to pick up the pace, so I entered into a town called Ontario, and I started praying. I was having a rough go of it. The last thing I needed to do was find out that I was in fucking Canada. Skulking around town, I made good use of my knife. And began rummaging through abandoned houses for food. What the fuck? Anything except food, huh? Found a bulletproof vest before a single bite of food. Safe to say we are not in Canada. In one of the houses, I found a box of ammo for my pistol, and I put it straight to work. Since my pistol was integrally suppressed, I could just shoot zombies in the head all day without attracting the others. So using this, I began picking up the pace to search for food faster. Finding a can of spaghetti, I quickly opened with my knife and devoured it. Not exactly a 5-course meal, but your boy Mr. Boyardee will keep me from starving to death for a little while. So now that I was no longer actively dying, I decided to search the majority of the town and get what supplies I could. There was good shit in here. A lighter, warmer clothes, a fucking crossbow, and then I found an old-timey ass pump. I could just sit here and drink clean water to my heart's content. And then I heard something. A nearby buck was bugling. Now normally they wouldn't do this so close to a town, but they're probably getting bolder, meaning nobody's been hunting them for a while. And so I head into the woods searching for him. Venison sounded pretty good to my hungry ass right about now. Fuck, he survived it? So pretty big noob fail on my end. Running through the city streets, the deer quickly escaped from me. Still hungry, I decided to search some nearby houses and found a can of dog food. And after eating it, I proceeded to throw up. I'm gonna be honest, post-apocalyptic life fucking sucks. And almost like a sign from God, I once again heard the deer bugling, but this time on the other side of town. This deer was clearly not the sharpest tool in the shed, but when they're not being hunted by their biggest predator, I suppose natural selection doesn't really work anymore. So I headed towards them and looted a couple houses along the way, and near the police station in a shed, I found something very nice. So with my new weapon, I went to finish what I'd started. Not this time. So with the deer now dead, I skinned it, took all the meat, went to a nearby house with a stove, and started cooking all of it up. Once it was done cooking, I flopped my meat on the dirty floor, and once it cooled off, I ate all of it. So now I was well clothed and fed, as well as decently armed. But I wasn't just gonna sit around in this fucking town looting up cans of dog food for the rest of my life. I was gonna set out and find out what the fuck had happened. You see, this region was divided by a river. On the right side is like anywhere else in the world. And on the left, a highly secure military-only access zone. So I set off to cross into there. If there were any answers to be found, that's where they'd be. I set off south, passing through a gas station and lumber mill. Along the way, I encountered a wild hog. Ah! The saddest part about that is unironically some of the best shooting I've ever done, and that was at a fucking pig that was running away. I then passed through a town called Seneca, which I looted clean, and continued on. Now the military zone was divided by a giant river with high rocks on each side, but there was a land bridge on the southern side that I would go across. Now usually they'd have patrols out here to stop people, but safe to assume there's no one out here today. The wolves were dead. Having sustained a cut in my head, I quickly bandaged up. Returning to the corpses of the wolves, I saw that upon hitting me in the head, they'd badly damaged my Ushanka. Feeling as if I'd been stolen from, I skinned the wolf and took his head as recompense. I like that. But unfortunately, I was unable to take the meat from these wolves. It was riddled with parasites, and I wasn't desperate enough to risk it. The whole incident had been slightly embarrassing. Comparing my aim of when I shot a harmless forest critter running away from me versus a pack of wolves jumping me was very enlightening. But regardless, I continued on forth, now officially entering the military zone. No. You don't see me. Oh, Christ. Cocksucker! The bear had hit me on the head and knocked me clean out. However, he wasn't eating me. It had probably been so long after the outbreak that bears had adapted to no longer try to eat humans since they'd get infected. A few minutes later, I woke up, heavily bleeding, but still alive. The protection offered by the wolf headdress had probably saved my life. So in a way, I should thank those wolves for jumping me, because otherwise, if I'd just been wearing my Ushanka, I'd be dead. After patching myself up, I could still hear that the bear was nearby. So I quickly skulked away. Despite quickly bandaging my wounds, I'd lost a lot of blood, so my vision was going to be reduced for a little while. Heading further up the hill, I found some sort of military building. Sneaking under the wall, I went to further investigate. Upon entering, I found that there was this strange central building flanked on all sides by multiple military barracks. Searching inside these barracks, I found an eclectic mix of gear, including a wide variety of military-type caliber ammo and a fucking plate carrier. In black too, like I was some fucking special operations guy. No, I'm just a homeless bum trying to wander around and figure out what the fuck's going on. So I continued to go along the outside of this central building, hoping to figure out what the hell it was. In one of the buildings, I found an SKS, a reliable and steady rifle, and I then continued investigating. Finding the entrance to the main central building, I could immediately tell this was a prison. Why the fuck was a military in charge of a prison? Heading inside, this place was packed with zombies. Again, using my suppressed pistol, I just sat there and picked them all off. With all of them dead, I investigated further. Looking at the cells, I saw that there was 3 bunks in each tiny little cell. Even in a Gitmo type operation, you don't put 6 people in a tiny little room like this. Heading back into the courtyard, I was able to see the bodies upon bodies stacked of prisoners. Which, macabre as it sounds, it does make sense to just kill them if there's a fucking zombie infection going around. Suddenly feeling very tense and like I didn't want to be here anymore, I quickly left. I continued heading up north and followed the river. Along this river, I found a bridge clogged with civilian vehicles, with a tank preventing them from gaining access to the military side. Seems like as soon as the outbreak began, the army boys weren't letting any of the civilians into their little playpen. Further up north, I found a dam crossing into the military zone with a very similar story, but this one was strange, because there was military vehicles coming from the civilian zone into the military zone that had been stopped. And on the other side of this dam, I found a strange bunker door. As I descended further, the darkness around me grew stronger and stronger, so I lit a road flare. Reaching the bottom, I found a tunnel that was both partially collapsed and flooded up to my ankles in water. I didn't want to be trapped down here where my road flare ran out of light, so I had to keep a good pace. At multiple points throughout the tunnels, I found a series of improvised barricades. Some real horror movie type shit must have happened down here when the infection started. In the tunnels, I found multiple stores of military hardware, some a little more dangerous than others. And I thought to myself, what's with all this secrecy? Why do they need to hide the fact that they're moving artillery shells around so much? And then I came upon a particularly sinister room. And now it all made sense. A bunch of cages with mattresses and a bucket inside of them. How elegant. They weren't just moving bullets and shells around. They were moving human cargo around down here. There was no more reason for me to hang around in this grotesque place, so I continued on. Looting the rest of the tunnels, I found ammo for guns that I didn't have, but I also found some actually usable supplies, including a gas mask and multiple filters for it. With my light beginning to flicker and die out, I found an exit. Exiting out of the tunnel, I now found myself even further north. At this point, I'd covered a lot of ground and seen a lot of unspeakable atrocities, but I had found very few answers and a lot more questions. The problem is, I'd been staying on the border between the civilian zone and the military zone, and I'd already found some pretty evil shit here. So, I knew that to find the real freak shit, I'd have to head further in. A short distance from the tunnel exit, I found another facility. This place was absolutely crawling with zombies. So this time, instead of killing all of them, I snuck around. This place was divided in two sections. An outer section and an inner section, with only one heavily guarded doorway connecting the two. The facility was set up in such a way that even the army boys guarding it on the outside had no idea what was going on in the inside. So I headed inside. Inside, I found biohazard tents and shipping crates. Something wasn't right. Now it all made sense. They were just doing evil experiments on people. They were stored in the prison, transported using the underground tunnels, and then brought here to be experimented on. I could tell this was true because further into the facility, I saw that they had these two bunkers that hooked up to the underground tunnel system. But this explanation only offered another question. Why here? If you're doing, literally the most evil experiments possible, surely you wouldn't do them within 1 mile of major cities. Of course, there's the bridges, but wouldn't it just be safer to put it up in Alaska or some shit? So, I wasn't done just yet. I finished scavenging what I could from this facility, which included a lot of ammo, plus much warmer clothes. I knew that if I was going to find out what was going on, I'd have to bite the bullet and head further into the military zone. So that's exactly what I did. Along the way, I came across an old dilapidated bunker, inside of which I found an AUG. This was perfect. Not only was the AUG a highly capable rifle, I also had a magazine as well as a shit ton of ammo for it already. Although admittedly, the built-in scope is a little awkward. Traversing deep into the military zone, I found a giant airfield. With a place as overstuffed with military gear as this, even if it's been looted by countless other people, there's still bound to be shit here. So I started looting. And I was right. The place was absolutely crawling with ammo. Something wasn't right. The zombies outside are throwing up a fuss, but they don't know I'm here. Something else is out there. Well, it's probably best to not think through the moral implications of what I just did. Good news, I'm not the only person left alive in the world, and also I get to have this guy's stuff, but bad news, I'm a fucking murderer. However, as I was rummaging through this guy's pockets, I heard something. The pained grunting of another human. This guy's buddy was outside and waiting for me. At this point, it's too late to try to come out peacefully. Only one of us was going to leave this place alive, and I think we all know my choice. From the sound of his grunting, I could hear that he was to my left, approximately 10 meters away. Now, he knew exactly where I was, but he probably didn't know that I knew that he was here. My best bet was to simply rush him. I'd got him, but my gunshots would alert every zombie in the airfield. I needed to get inside. He once again involuntarily grunted out in pain. The guy was still alive. He must have had a vest on that caught the bullets and knocked him out instead of killing him. It's way too fucking late to back out now. I need to finish this. Fucking finishing you this time. Our fight had kicked up too much noise. Every zombie at the airfield was coming to investigate these noises. I took what little I could off these guys, but I couldn't just sit around here and get swarmed. I had to continue on. Opening the door to a hermetically sealed bunker door, I knew there was some serious shit behind here. Entering in and emerging to a room, the air was choked with poisonous gas. I equipped my gas mask, threw a filter on it, and headed in. The filters I had were very old and wouldn't last long in a gas like this. I didn't have long in here. Inside, I found more evidence of medical experimentation on humans. That meant the gas in the air was probably a failsafe system in case the bunker complex was ever compromised. So the really freaky shit is probably down here. There would be answers here, one way or another. Heading through, I found what was at this point a far too familiar sight of zombies, as well as an absolute glut of military supplies. With all these spare guns lying around, I was able to find an AK. So now I had an AUG, AK, and SKS. I needed to carry all three of these around because they all shot different bullets, and I couldn't scavenge enough of just one type. Heading further through, I found a section of the bunker that had fucking convenience stores and a hospital. Not the kind of hospital you go to when you get shot, but when you have a cold or a fever. There were people living in this bunker facility. Outside of these little revelations, I was completely lost down here, stumbling around in the dark with my filters slowly running out. Some of the zombies I killed down here still had usable filters, but these were even more degraded than mine were. They wouldn't last long at all. Eventually, I emerged into a large open room, the ceiling so high that I couldn't even see it. I heard the horrific screeching of metal. Was this simply some old machinery grinding together? Or was it something else? Something stalking me in the darkness? I didn't want to wait around to find out. I found a garage jutting out of this large room, and through it, another door. Through this door, another seemingly endless series of tunnels. I continued scrambling around here, making sure not to run or panic, because the more I breathed, the faster my filter would run out. After spending what felt like an eternity down here, I found the way out. Emerging on the other side of the bunker, I found myself in some sort of strange tunnel. There was no more gas here, so I ripped off this old 1960s fucking Soviet-era gas mask and could actually breathe again. So I continued on. Along this mostly collapsed tunnel, I found pallets, boxes, and burned out trucks. After descending a great distance down towards the earth, I emerged into some strange destroyed bridge. Making it across, I once again found myself burdened with zombies. At this point, I feel like I could go into hell itself and I'd still be fucking pestered by these things. Regardless, I killed them because that's all I'm good at doing anymore, I guess, is just killing, and found the end of this tunnel. Emerging, I passed the skeleton of something that was very clearly not human. And next, I found myself in some wintry wonderland. Or I would say Wonderland, but I'm about 100% sure this place is going to be a hellhole. But this didn't make any sense. I mean, sure, on the other side it had been kind of cold, but over here I was literally freezing to death. And I couldn't have traveled more than a mile through the tunnels. Wherever I now found myself, there was something horribly wrong with this place. Survival here was going to be significantly more difficult. I began by making a fire inside of an abandoned house nearby. In this Arctic environment, even with the warmest clothes, I was unable to self-regulate my temperatures, meaning I had to stop every once in a while and build a fire to warm up. Now being warm for at least a short while, I headed off from the fire and headed into this unknown territory. Along the way, I found a destroyed military convoy, and further from that, a small base out in the snow. And the base was filled with what else except fucking zombies. I cleared out the base and looted it, but along the way I'd taken a couple cuts and lost a decent amount of blood. Exploring further, I found some strange rock formation with a couple tents at the base of it. Finding an entrance into it, I headed in. A large skeleton bolted to the wall with these strange vines, and next to it, a whiteboard filled with nerd shit. I swear to God, every time I think I get closer to figuring out what the fuck is going on and solving this whole mystery, I get thrown another curveball and then I have 100 more questions. You know, like for example, right now, what the fuck, dude? Confused as ever, I ascended to the top of this pillar, found some more loot on this strange shrine, headed down, and continued on. Further along in the middle of this lake, I found a giant military base, once again scavenging copious amounts of ammunition. And at this point, I was basically flush with bullets. Heading out of the military zone, I continued wandering further in search of answers. What the fuck is that? Yeah, what did I say about this place being a fucking frozen hellhole? Having felled this horrific beast, I examined it further, and judging by its appearance, it looks like this thing might be chomping down a little bit of zombie flesh. With things like these roaming around, I decided to continue further, but obviously a lot more carefully. Nearby, I found some strange shrine connected to a cave system, within which there was further military supplies, as well as evidence of a desperate yet ultimately fruitless struggle to survive. Heading out, I kept moving. Before long, appearing on the horizon, I saw some sort of castle jutting out of a lake. Now I want you to look at this castle right now and tell me that this doesn't exude the most sinister and evil energy possible. Clearly, the structure here was significantly older than the military camp around it. There was something to this, so I went further in to investigate. Crossing the lake to access the castle, I found that at its deepest, it only went up to my knees, which didn't make any sense because why wouldn't this be frozen over? Yeah, sure, some lakes can stay liquid even in freezing conditions, but not little shallow ones like these. Something else was stopping this from freezing over. I waited inside one of the abandoned houses nearby until the morning. Upon heading up the hill and finding the entrance, I discovered that this wasn't a castle at all, but literally a maze. When presented with a maze that you could easily get lost inside of and freeze to death within, what other option is there to take except to go all in? So I pretty stupidly decided, let's find the end of this whole thing. Shortly into the maze, I began to hear the guttural breathing of some foul creature. A fucking minotaur. But mythical beast or not, the AK seems to reign supreme. Trusting in the Soviet steel in my hands, I continued further into the maze. Oh, okay, cool. I guess there's just fucking skeletons in the maze, too. The shots I had used to kill the Minotaur and now the skeletons had alerted everything in this maze to where I was. They began closing in. Ah, shit! Fucking thing jammed. My AK had jammed just after killing the first Minotaur. I thought they weren't supposed to fucking do that. The Minotaurs and skeletons closest to me were dead, but all the ones in the maze were finding their way to me now. I quickly reloaded my magazine and had to keep pushing. A heavy fog was rolling in and the sun was setting. I couldn't spend much longer here. Oh shit. I didn't see a corpse. Alright, listen, I know I shit-talked the zombies a whole lot, but after a whole bunch of minotaurs and now invisible fucking skeleton guys, I would do anything to have them back. But since I was already balls deep in the maze, I had no choice but to continue further. And just as the night and fog were truly about to reach their apex, like a lighthouse off in the mist, I saw a tall structure. Perhaps this would be my salvation. God. Arriving at the base of this tower, I scaled to its tallest height, and thereupon made a fire where I could once again warm up. I stayed there till the morning, at which point I descended from the tower and investigated its base. At this point, I can't even be fucking surprised anymore. None of this is making any sense. If it's answers that I came to get, There's only one way to find them. Keep going. I found myself in some dark facility, clearly extraterrestrial in nature. However, there were signs of human habitation, mainly trash because we make a lot of that stuff. But all the same, perhaps there was people down here. Maybe this was some kind of sanctuary that had escaped the zombie plague. So I ran along the pitch black tunnels searching for anything. Bursting through the wall, I found the same strange vines that had entangled the giant skeleton inside the pillar. What the fuck could this all mean? Fucking jammed. Oh cool, horrors beyond my comprehension. My bullets had killed him, but this attack had seriously fucked me up. My jacket was completely ruined. While the pockets would still hold my items, it would provide me no insulation. And at this point I realized that down here was even colder than I'd been before. Although I wasn't freezing now, I would start too soon. On top of that, I'd had to use the last of my bandages to stop the bleeding. However, left with no other choice, I continued to march down the tunnels. I hear another one. Holding perfectly still, I heard another set of footsteps. This one wasn't gonna get the drop on me. Shit, there's more coming. Two more of these unspeakable beasts lay dead. My plate carrier had absorbed the brunt of the damage, but I was once again bleeding. Left with nothing to stop it, I had no choice but to tear up my own fucking pants into rags. Obviously, using rags to stop bleeding is far from ideal, and I lost a great deal of blood in the process. With literally no pants on and a ruined jacket, I was essentially naked in an area that was well below freezing. And in case that wasn't bad enough, the rags I had created from my pants had given me a blood infection. This would kill me within the next 30 minutes if I didn't get medicine. And that's assuming the cold doesn't get me, or you know, the fucking Lovecraftian beasts down here. Who knew applying the dirtiest possible rags to an open wound could make you sick? Eventually, I emerged into a larger, much more illuminated room, covered in the corpses of heavily armed soldiers. You didn't exactly have to be a detective to figure out what killed these guys. I entered some sort of loading facility. I could still hear the blood-curdling screams of those disgusting things around. They didn't know I was here, so I just had to be careful. However, there were a lot of army barracks here. Searching through these, I was able to replenish the ammo that I'd lost killing the minotaurs in the maze. On top of that, there were these hazmat sections that included, among other things, the exact medicine that I needed. I took the medicine, and scavenging through the army buildings, I ripped up every piece of clothing I could into rags, and tore apart boxes of ammo, not only for the ammo inside, but for the paper. With these pathetic fire supplies, I retreated to the top of a building, closing all the doors behind me. So I started taking the medicine, which in time would cure me. As I healed from this to prevent myself from literally just freezing to death, I continuously created these shitty little fires. They'd constantly go out, and I'd have to use my lighter to restart them. Paper and rags don't exactly make for the longest lasting fires after all. I sat upon this roof for a great time. With these meager supplies, I was only just barely able to escape the clutches of death. At one point, I'd gotten so weak that I was practically knocking on his door. But all in all, I was able to make a full recovery and even scavenge more clothes that I could actually wear. How long had passed, I truly couldn't tell you. Hours, days, weeks, months? I had no idea. I'd spent so long down here that I was beginning to acclimate to the environment. Getting so used to sneaking around and listening for these unspeakable horrors, it had gotten to a point that I could move around this entire place without them detecting me. So I was like a fucking kid in a candy shop in a giant military zone chock full of the best supplies. At one point I found a bunch of fucking grenades, and hearing that one of those freaks was below me, I just started dropping grenades on him until he died for fun. 3 grenades, by the way. These guys don't go down easy. That's not to say this place was like some utopia. It was still bone-chilling and cold down here, so every once in a while I'd tear up some clothes and set them on fire. But I found some really nice shit down here, including an AS Val, an integrally suppressed rifle, some real special ops shit. I didn't really have the means to carry around 4 full-sized rifles, so I dropped the AK for it. After becoming basically the king of this fucking zone, I came across a strange box labeled Project Essentials. Inside of it was one half of a key, and that's exactly when I knew I was done here. I refitted all of my supplies, including ammo, and I found half of a key. I mean, if that doesn't literally unlock the fucking mystery here, I don't know what will. I headed up this sort of road system until I came across a teleporter. It's probably for the best that I leave this place. I mean, God knows, maybe if I hang around long enough, I'll become one of those fucking things. I could feel that I was close to unraveling this whole mystery. I had all the pieces, I was just missing that last little bit of something to put it all together. Exiting the futuristic tunnels, I found myself returned to the center of the maze in a large castle complex. Climbing upon one of the towers, I could now see everything in this wintry area that I had entered after passing through the gas tunnels. This whole area was this sort of dome-shaped thing surrounded by completely impassable mountains on all sides. I had explored the majority of the northern and western sections of it, and from my new vantage point, I could see everything else here. I could see that there was a great many more military camps than the ones I'd looted, but further south from here, a giant castle complex. I was willing to bet that if there was anywhere that needed a key to go through, that would be it. But I still only have half of it. I needed to find the other piece. Scanning the horizon on where I should go, faintly off in the distance near one of the bases I'd looted, I saw a smoke trail. This was something worth checking out, so I headed down. Returning to the large airbase in the middle of the lake, I climbed the rocky cliff and saw that it was a fucking helicopter crash. There hadn't been here before, and I certainly hadn't seen any helicopters flying through the air. There was something weird about this. There was a great deal of zombies around the crash, so I took out my AS-Val and just started popping their heads. Again, like the grown-up version of the pistol that I had earlier, I could just shoot them and they seemingly wouldn't even notice. Since the AS-Val was such an exotic rifle, I didn't have a great amount of ammo for it, but this was a perfect way to use it. And in the helicopter crash, I found the other half of the key. I mean, to be honest, this part mostly seems like the handle, so maybe I could have passed with just the actual key unlocking part, but who fucking knows. On top of that, I also found a helmet with night vision. So between my cool guy AS-Val and fucking night vision helmet, I was becoming some sort of a knockoff Call of Duty character. With the assembled key now in my pocket, I was truly on the cusp of answering all my questions. Restocked on bandages and ammo, I advanced on the castle. I knew that this would be my final hurdle, but it'd be far from easy. I had a good amount of ammo for my SKS and a lot for my AUG, as well as a little bit for my AS-Val. No longer would I be denied my answers. I'd come too far and done too much. So, I began my assault. A large group of skeletons was gathered in worship at some horrific idol. I scaled a destroyed building nearby, pulled out my SKS, and started picking off this filthy congregation. Upon taking fire, these skeletons started running to the building I was holed up in. It's like some Call of Duty zombies type shit. All the unholy worshippers were taken care of. I advanced further into the complex. The SKS had carried me deep into the complex, but by now it was out of ammo. My AUG would have to do the heavy lifting. Holy shit! A whole horde of them was coming right for me. Backed into a tower, I could only give a little ground to them before I was cornered. I had to stand and fight. Shit. Oh my god. A close call, but I couldn't just sit and rest on my laurels. I had to reload my mags and push further into the castle. Crossing a giant moat, I saw a group of skeletons, so I pulled out the AS-Val. I could pick them off and take them one by one. You see what I mean about this gun being some special ops shit? At this point, the AS Val was out of ammo. It had played its part well. I was near the end of this. I could feel it. But down to my last gun, if I ran out of 5.56, I was fucked. Jam. Dude, what the fuck is this gun? My gun had jammed a second time, and now I lay on the floor unconscious. Was this it? Was this where my whole journey would end? All that time spent exploring, investigating, finding new and fucked up things, almost dying. Would it all end here? This close to the end? Would I truly have come all this way just to be slaughtered by some 11-foot tall skeleton in a shithole frozen tower? Perhaps the version of me that had started this journey would die here, but after all I'd been through and killed, I was no longer that weak. So, I got back up. As I arose, I fell down the tower. Landing on a beam, I saw the unaware skeleton leaving the building. They all thought I was dead. Once he had exited far enough from the tower, I went back up the stairs and retrieved my firearm. Using a gun cleaning kit, I repaired it to the best of my abilities. I couldn't have it jam on me like that again. And so, I went to take my revenge. As I riddled them with bullets, the skeleton struggled to move. With all four towering monstrosities now laid low, I searched this courtyard for supplies. In a stone shack nearby, I found a box containing emergency repair materials, which I made good use of, as up to this point, I'd been taking a pretty big fucking beating on my plate carrier. In a nearby building, I also found fucking chainmail leggings, like it's the year 1233. The pair of cargo pants I had on were all torn up from, being pushed around by mythical beings, so I threw the chainmail leggings on. And it gave me like this little kind of Speedo effect, which is, kind of gross to be honest. There's a lot less space in them, but they're a lot warmer. I also made sure to gather some sticks and bark. With my clothing being little more than rags, I would need a lot of fires to warm up. And then I found the door that I'd been searching for. The one that required that needlessly decorative key. This was it. Time to go in. I found myself in a dark, moss-covered tunnel. I think I'm back in some fucking cave system again. Okay, yeah, that's cool, I guess. Just a landmine hidden amongst the vines and rocks. That's chill. I woke up a short time later. Owing to the chainmail leggings, I'd actually lost very little health. However, my leg was now broken. In order to even be able to move at all, I had to use the majority of the sticks that I had left, as well as a spare bandage to craft myself a splint. It would take a long time for my leg to heal, and I was incredibly cold because all my new clothing had just been torn up again. So using the very few sticks that I had left, plus any paper or rags that I could throw together, I made a fire and warmed up here as much as I could. The journey ahead into this cave would be perilous, of that I could be certain. And with my splinted leg, I was only capable of shuffling forward slowly, so I pressed on. If I wasn't able to get to the other side of this cave before I began freezing, this cave would be my fucking tomb. I had to keep going. I was fucking dead already. I don't have the ammo to be doing shit like that. Emerging outside to the nighttime and rain, this is basically the last thing someone freezing to death wants to see. However, I did find some sticks and bark out here, so finding a rock face that would provide me some protection from the rain, I made a fire and waited out the night. During this time, my leg healed and I was back to full strength. I got some like Wolverine level healing powers, dude. Upon reaching the top of these stairs, I felt like I'd reached the end of the earth itself. I was at some derelict battlefield where a great struggle had once taken place. I mean, listen, it's one big skeleton surrounded by a bunch of little skeletons. I think something cool probably happened here. Across this great battlefield lay a profane altar. On it lay a great weapon. So I made my way to it. Upon acquiring this final and most terrible of rifles and seeing what it was capable of, everything now made sense. I had all the pieces. Now it was just time to put them together. Anywhere between 50 or perhaps so far as 1,000,000 years ago, aliens visited this planet. The duration or purpose of their visit is entirely unknowable, although certainly it was something of very low significance, maybe just a pit stop along the way to somewhere else. What is certain, however, is that they departed, and some of the materials or technology were left behind. The value of these items left behind to them cannot be ascertained. Perhaps this was the equivalent of trash to them. However, trash or not, these artifacts began to influence the local area in ways we still cannot understand. Sometime after these artifacts were left behind, humanity discovered them. This led to the government taking over and building this bunker complex that was the only way in and out, with a failsafe system of gas so that if anything went wrong, they could flick a switch and everyone in there would die. With a stable place to perform research, expeditions into the affected zone began. The influence these artifacts had on the physical world around them is incomprehensible to us. Not only do we not understand them, we lack the ability to understand them. However, they have two easily observed effects. The first is the cold. When down in the area most saturated with alien technology, the cold is all but unsurvivable. And as you head a little bit further away from it, in the area above where their technology was found, it's significantly colder than the actual part of the planet it's in. And second, it seems to morph living beings in an unfathomable fashion. The skeletons, minotaurs, and who could forget those invisible bastards down in the most affected area. So, upon seeing all of this, the government thinks, okay, how can we weaponize this? Through researching the alien materials, they are able to make the Maker rifle, which is the one that I had just recently found. And through biological research, or more accurately, crimes against God that would make Goebbels seem like a saint, they are also able to create the zombie virus. Now, whether this was some biological weapon accidentally released or a super soldier project gone wrong, I'm not sure. But I'm willing to bet they did a shit ton of research on how the skeletons are still moving around despite being dead. And this is what ended up causing the zombie virus. And that takes us up to the outbreak. Now, by all evidence available to me, the outbreak began somewhere in the bunker. Shortly after this, the bunker was gassed, with everyone inside who wasn't wearing a hazmat suit instantly killed. But the bunker kind of failed at its one job because the infection seems to have spread on both sides before the gas was initiated. This led to the airbase directly outside of it being almost immediately overrun. Some of the soldiers stationed here probably fought to the death, but a good number of them must have fled. Now, if you were doing super secret, like top military research, you're not just going to recruit poop troops, you're going to have like special ops soldiers, right? And you're going to have them trained for, the worst case scenario. So immediately upon detection of the outbreak, a code is given out over the radio. Once this is broadcasted over the radio, everyone immediately knows what to do. They've trained for this. Everyone that's not a soldier and is basically a liability, including prisoners and maybe any civilian contractors, are immediately killed. And so as the outbreak is spreading, the boys suit up and go to fight off the zombies. However, not everyone would have stayed and fought. It takes a lot of guts to not literally run away from a fucking zombie horde. So, some of them must have fled into the civilian zone, carrying the plague with them, from which point the civilian zone was now infected. The army boys, due to, actually having stuff to kill the zombies and training, are actually managing to beat back the infection and slowly reclaim land. Meanwhile, the civilian zone is just getting run through. The first town to be hit was almost certainly Onondaga. Seeing as there was basically no signs of resistance, they probably didn't even realize what was coming. I mean, the fucking ambulances haven't even left their post. This place was probably absolutely swarmed. This horde then began spreading out in all directions. The two major cities on each side of Onondaga actually have signs of the local military stepping in and trying to restore order. You see, there were military bases on the civilian side of the divide. These guys were probably more of a National Guard type scenario where they didn't even know what was going on the other side. Now, while their efforts to restore order might have been heroic, a couple barricades in the middle of a town aren't going to stop a giant horde. So these bases were quickly overrun, and with that, basically the entire civilian zone was. There were some holdouts that show evidence of surviving for days or maybe even weeks, but more or less, just as the military zone finally got all of their shit in order, they realized that across the river from them was a giant fucking horde. So despite being severely depleted and having just fought for their lives against their own turned brothers, they now had to man the crossing points. Their orders almost certainly were to not let anybody through, civilian or not, but this was a very obviously ragtag response. One group had a tank, the other just blew up the bridge. They were just kind of doing whatever they could. But you know, shit like tanks are actually pretty good at stopping unarmed people, so they were able to stabilize the situation. Seeing that they weren't being let in, a mob formed from the most heavily armed of those on the civilian side. Hunters, policemen, some of the army units that were still left, basically a ragtag group of whoever had a gun, and seeking access into what was essentially a safe zone, assaulted one of the most weakly held crossing points at a dam. This can be seen from the Humvees that are pointing in. These would have been from the local army guys trying to get to a place that wasn't overrun with zombies. Through sheer numbers and desperation, it's evident that they were able to push through into the military zone. This can be seen based on the fact that there's these army guys lying in stretchers. If a guy's infected by a zombie, you don't put him in a stretcher, you just kill him. These guys got shot. Pushing into the military zone, this ragtag mob was probably cut down pretty quickly when reinforcements arrived. However, all the shooting that had occurred had probably dragged the entire horde to this location, and with their defenses now breached, the guys on the military side were completely overwhelmed. Lacking the strength to fight off another group of zombies, they were almost certainly wiped out. So basically, in the end, they both got fucked over, so, you know, crabs in a bucket or something like that. And from that point, the globe itself was probably infected. There is evidence of survivor camps built near major cities. Clearly these guys built these camps next to the city so that they could just do loot runs and go and grab cans and supplies or whatever, and that probably also explains why the zombie presence is so diminished. As they were looting the city, they probably had a positive KD against the zombies. However, by my time, all of these camps show signs of either being overrun or abandoned due to a lack of supplies remaining. Again, this isn't to say everyone's dead, probably not, judged by the fact that I saw 2 living people, but for all I know, maybe there was only 3 of us left and I killed the other 2 guys. Now, as for all those who had been trapped on the snow side when the bunker was gassed, the infection also tore through their military camps, but there's evidence that a couple of them ran away and survived for longer, although this was ultimately fruitless as there were no shipments of food coming in. The guys who survived the longest were probably those trapped within the alien facility. The outbreak never spread to there, although I'm willing to bet they wish it did, because what ended up happening is being so close to the source of the alien artifacts, some of them transformed into those alien creatures and killed the rest. The fabric of reality itself is so fucked here that these bodies haven't even started to decompose. Meanwhile, the ones topside are already skeletons. And to think that at the very start of this journey, I'd been scavenging around in some shithole town, eating dog food and throwing up. So where exactly does that leave me? Just like those same poor saps who'd been trapped on the snow side, I had no way of going back to what is essentially the real world. I mean, at least I had a cool gun. So ultimately, I have all the answers and nobody to share them with. Thank you for watching. I know this is like really different from what I usually do, and I'm sorry it took so long to get out. When I started, I thought this would be 25 or 30 minutes, but as I was editing, I'm like, ooh, this part's cool, let me include this, and so on and so forth. Anyway, if you fuck with it, let me know. If you don't, let me know. If you watched the end, you probably did fuck with it, so it's like a skewed perspective, but what the fuck am I gonna do? And of course, thank you to all of my YouTube members. Because of you guys, I can afford a second bowl of gruel. Special thank you, of course, to Pebble Penguin 252, Darakath, Stephen LeBaron, and Not Catchy at the Albertus Lover tier. Big ups, guys. Plus, Platypus Advisor, Heath Dion, Anchorwing, Swen Tiki 96, and Brady Jarvis at the Big Fella tier.